everybody. This one is called Debtors, Prisons Are Everywhere. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administering Your Public Servants. I have videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. And donations to support this work are appreciated. But I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the commercial paper, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, PayPal gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Anyways, so every taxpayer is a Cestui Que Trust having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's in Bolins, 1912. And the summary of the congressional record from June 13th, 1967, 5 pages of the congressional record, says that a citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive Cestui Que Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. And this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, Volume 2, under the definition of mort main. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal feoffees, to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while a season of the land remained in the nominal feoffee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks, to be bound in conscience to account to his Cestui Que use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And so this is all coming from the Roman cult. The Cestui Que Trust is owned and operated by the Roman cult. Slater's protestations that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income taxes unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States. The IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And so a U.S. citizen is a taxpayer, is a slave, is a Cestui Que Trust. And this is D.C. Code, Chapter 56, Section 1617, located at 31 Stat, 1432, the legal estate to be in the Cestui Que use. Again, that sounds like the Roman cult Cestui Que Trust. This is more D.C. Code, an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, which was approved March 3rd, 1901 by the 56th Congress at 31 Stat 1189, and in Section 2 where it says, and be it further enacted that in the interpretation of the construction of the said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely, the word person as shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations. Again, U.S. citizen equals Roman cult equals slave equals Cestui Que Trust. And this is more D.C. Code located at, this is Section 252, located at 31 Stat 1230. And it talks about the presumption of death, okay? A Cestui Que Trust is a trust for a dead thing. And so this is where they presume that you're dead. They presume that you're a Cestui Que Trust. Everything is in presumption, and we're going to go into that a little bit later, where I've even got documents to say that they presume. Creates a rebuttable presumption is what that does. Anyway, statutes equals contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? This is Title 15, United States Code, Section 44, definitions. Corporations shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts Trust Association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest, and it goes through the same definition, except it doesn't have shares of capital, stock, or certificates of interest. Okay, so that's the Cestui Que Trust. That's exactly what it is right there. They're defining it right there. And now a little diversion. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so that you're notified when there's a new upload. And there's the YouTube channel, my front page, and notice it's pointing at the bell. When you click on the bell, a little pop-up will come up and that asks you if you want to be notified, and the answer is yes. You got to click it and click OK. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. Statutes equals contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? But individuals, when acting as representatives of a collective group, cannot be said to be exercising their personal rights and duties, nor be entitled to their purely personal privileges. Rather, they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association of which they are agents or officers, and they are bound by its obligations. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, Braswell versus U.S., quoting U.S. versus White. And so when you get up there in that kangaroo court and say, I am the name, then you just agreed to be a surety for that fictitious entity. And Uniform Commercial Code equals Unidroit equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? Whenever the Uniform Commercial Code creates a presumption with respect to a fact or provides that a fact is presumed, the trier of fact must find the existence of the fact unless and until evidence is introduced that supports a finding of its non-existence. And that's UCC 1-206. And this is the Texas version of the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the same, but it's section 3.308, proof of signatures. In an action with respect to an instrument, the authenticity of and authority to make each signature on the instrument are admitted unless specifically denied in the pleadings. If the validity of a signature is denied in the pleadings, the burden of establishing validity is on the person claiming validity, but the signature is presumed to be authentic and authorized. So essentially what they're doing is they're forging your signature onto a contract, and you don't even know that's going on. And if you don't know that that's what's happening, then they just go ahead and securitize it and sell it on Wall Street and put you in jail. And because, remember, you allowed yourself or said you wanted to be the surety. The following rules apply in an action on a certificated security against the issuer unless specifically denied in the pleadings. Each signature on a security certificate or in a necessary endorsement is admitted. If the effectiveness of a signature is put in issue, the burden of establishing effectiveness is on the party claiming under the signature, but the signature is presumed to be genuine and authorized. And that's Uniform Commercial Code, section 8.114. And so again, they forge your signature onto a contract and sell you into slavery. And now a little diversion, announcing a subscription-based YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. The recommended cost of the subscription is currently $1.99 a month because it avoids the advertising only. Originally, when I set up this YouTube channel, I was planning on having some proprietary material, exclusive material, I should say. Well, proprietary too. But anyways, after thinking about it, the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through the fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose these criminals. And so for everyone's benefit. So for that reason, I can't think of anything that I want to have exclusively on that channel. I'm currently publishing 5 videos a week, but it is an opportunity if you want to make a donation, and certainly donations are appreciated. It's modest, but everybody chips in $1.99, and it can add up to be, a decent amount of money. And so whatever you decide, I'm not saying you should or should not, but it's available if you wish to do it. But I do have an exclusive Arlington private information share on there, but that's it. Anyways, some people had trouble finding the YouTube channel, and so a link to it is at the bottom. And there's a link at the bottom of this one too. This is the front page of the channel, and it's showing the bottom arrow is showing the start free trial. The reason I have that there is because some people had sent me $1.99, and I wasn't sure if they wanted me to subscribe to the channel. I sent them an email asking them that and offering to refund it, but they haven't got back to me. So I'm guessing it was a donation, but everything's appreciated. But if you need to subscribe, then I have no control over the subscribers at all. I can't even see all the subscribers. I can see some of them, but so the bottom line is if you want to start a free trial, you have to click on the start free trial, and if you want to subscribe, I should say, and do whatever YouTube wants you to do. I'm sure they're going to want payment arrangements or something. I don't know, but but that's the way it has to be done. I have no control over subscribers, and you know, that's the way it is. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. Statutes equals Roman, a contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? These Roman cult Satanist bar member whores masquerading as a judge forge your signature onto a contract and then presume it's authorized and authentic, and who's going to call a judge a liar? And that's why they want to get you off to jail as quick as possible, because then you don't have access to even a pen and paper in there. And that's how they're populating the prisons. Carl Lentz brought up the issue of forgery against CPS when they stole his son in a successful one-page lawsuit. See the Judicial Whores video. Anyways, he, the convicted felon, has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law in his humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. So they are literally selling you into slavery. And this is the first order of business that these Satanists have to do, is get rid of that little nasty little common law problem. That's the reason they have to force the government into bankruptcy or engage in a military occupation somehow, because then that gets rid of their little common law problem. Because if at common law, they'd be put to death for this kind of stuff. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and make merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. That's Deuteronomy 24:7. These people are Satanists. Anyways, international law is a subset of canon law. International law started with the Roman cult. Unidroit stands for the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law. Unidroit controls and regulates the Uniform Commercial Code. Unidroit is located about 100 yards from the Holy See. Unidroit controls and governs, the Uniform Commercial Code. Unidroit, through Unidroit, the Roman cult has seized control of all courts. The Roman cult's bar members are already officers of all courts. See bar members 1, 2, 3, and 4. See the international law video. And now another little diversion. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profiles, I've got two of them, Sovereign Living and Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page was deleted due to censorship. Well, actually, I deleted it because of Facebook's censorship. And my private group at Sovereignty International is being deleted, again, because of their censorship. And so, therefore, it takes time to ban 17,000 people off of your group. And I'm not going to let Facebook profit from my hard work. My Yahoo private group is Administering Your Public Servants, and my Google private group is called Administering Your Public Servants. Anyway, so there's no common law crimes in the United States. There's no common law offenses against the United States. Only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command are crimes. And there's no common law crimes in Texas. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Everything is in Admiralty, okay? Remember, they have to get rid of that little common law problem, and so then they assault you with their Admiralty, okay? And that's all satanic, because Mark Passio's satanic talks about, he's a former Satanist priest, talks about the pillars of Satanism, and one of them is moral relativism, and that is what what's right or wrong is what we decide today, and tomorrow it'll be something different, and that's what they do in Admiralty courts, okay? The judge is sitting up there playing stupid, and if you don't say the right things, then they just railroad you, okay? Remember, it goes back to this contract under the Uniform Commercial Code. That's exactly what goes on. Anyways, a writ of error doth not lie upon a sentence in the Admiralty, but an appeal, and that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary 1835 edition under the definition of Admiralty. But they're citing Book 4 of Coke's Institutes on the Laws of England, And so it goes back to the 1500s. All appeals are taken in Admiralty. That's why it's called a court of appeals. It's the same thing that precipitated the War of Independence. This is taken from the Causes and Necessity for Taking Up Arms, 1775. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond the ancient limits for depriving us of a custom and an estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. And so that's the first thing they had to do. Is in 1775 there was a lot more people that understood Christianity, and so they knew that it was despotism and they knew that it was a tyranny. But today people are so dumbed down they can't figure that stuff out. Anyways, this is a cite from a book called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ella to the Utah Supreme Court, and that's associated with the case Diet versus Turner. And this basically says the same thing that the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms says, but in a different way. And in the meantime, civil law was the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by a martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law, to have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what's called equity in its place. And that's why it's all satanic, because normally equity is supposed to follow common law, and in the Bible it talks about equity. But when common law is destroyed, then equity can do literally anything it wants, and the Baal priest in the kangaroo court will sit up there and tell you that I can do anything I want in here, and that's exactly right. They can. And this is a letter from the Georgia Department of Driver Services, which September 5th, 2012, and this is the part that I want to mention is here on page 2 at the top. It's in the yellow highlighted area. It says the statute creates a rebuttable presumption of residency for anyone who meets the following criteria. Okay, rebuttable presumptions. Remember we talked about that, how the DC Code basically creates the rebuttable presumption that you're dead. And so any person who accepts employment or engages in any trade, profession, or occupation in Georgia, or enters his or her children to be educated in public or private or public schools in Georgia within 10 days after the commencement of such employment or education, or any person except for infrequent brief absences has been present in the state for 30 or more days, provided, however, that no person shall be considered a resident for purposes of this chapter unless such person is either a U.S. citizen or an alien with legal authorization from the U.S. Immigration Service. Okay, so there we go. That's talking about you can be a state citizen, and it doesn't fall into that, okay? And that's what we've talked about, is you can be a state citizen. There's two classes of citizens, and so then the state citizens this doesn't apply to. And so creates a rebuttable presumption, and that's what they all do. This is signed by their general counsel, okay? Anyways, so the statute creates a rebuttable presumption of residency for anyone who meets the following criteria. However, no such person shall be considered a resident for purposes of this chapter unless such person is either a U.S. citizen or an alien with legal authorization from the U.S. Immigration Naturalization Service. And so why do you think that they can't do anything about these so-called illegal aliens? Because they're neither, okay? That's exactly it. They can't do anything about it. They have more rights than anyone who thinks they're a U.S. citizen. That is so true, and that's why they have to be careful what they do. Anyways, and this all falls under the Federal Tax Lien Act creates a rebuttable presumption. And the definition, motor vehicle, the term motor vehicle creates means a self-propelled vehicle which is registered for highway use under the laws of any state or foreign country. And then it goes and starts talking about commercial paper about negotiable instruments. Okay, so that can apply to anybody that uses commercial paper, like when you're getting paid, your compensation is getting in commercial paper. That gives the IRS jurisdiction. If you're driving around a vehicle that's got a government's plate on it, then that gives them a presumption. Okay, this is all creates presumptions. Okay, rebuttable presumptions. And that's found at the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966, Public Law 89-719 at 80 Stat 1130 to 1131. And then this all falls under the international law rule, adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction, federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory, but the common law of the state and federal venue discussed. The civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws, and a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to a federal district court. And this is all taken from Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President, June 1957, and that's pages 158 through 165. That needs to change down there at the bottom. But the bottom line is that this all falls under the international law rule, because of U.S. citizens involved in interstate commerce. And this is National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia through their plenary power. That's military dictatorship, folks, Admiralty. Nationally covers those citizens, even one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And so, again, if you're a U.S. citizen, you get a Admiralty court. And that's the first thing they're busy doing, is fabricating evidence of that slave, okay? And because they want to assault you with one of their little contracts. And now a little diversion, CubeYard.com. For great custom websites, domain names, and hostings, go to CubeYard.com. Use coupon code CY172 for 20% off your first order. CubeYard.com, your source for websites, domain names, and hosting. Anyway, so statutes equals contract equals Roman cult. Did you give up your God-given rights for some satanic privileges? A penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute, the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. The forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. They assault you with one of their contracts. They forge your signature. They assault you. First of all, they got to assault you with the slave. Then they forge your signature onto a contract, and then they sell you into slavery. That's exactly what's going on. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute and brought with the sole object of recovering a penalty or forfeiture imposed as punishment for a specific offense, while remedial actions one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is a civil suit brought for the recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand closely related to criminal prosecutions, and on the other to actions for private injuries in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. That's why there's no such thing as a warrant, okay? All actions are civil actions, number one. Number two, there's no such thing as a lawful warrant anymore. All actions are civil actions. So they don't issue a lawful warrant. They create a debt and issue a capias, okay? And a capias is a debt instrument. And so, and now another little diversion. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Churchianity series. bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1, 2, and 3, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service or the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself no sales tax, do-it-yourself traffic stop, and do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through 9. And back to the topic at hand, get us out of the UN now. The United Nations is owned and operated by the Crown and their Roman cult handlers. See, the Crown is owned and operated by the Roman cult video. See, the United States is a Crown colony, and the Crown owns and operates the United Nations video 1 and 2. The Unidroit is coming from the United Nations. See the Roman cult slave scam 1 video. The United Nations maintains the international law collection, which is also coming from the Roman cult. They're using the Roman cult's international law rule to assault us with their fraudulent, fictitious Cestui Que Trust, U.S. citizen, slave. And this is the Vatican's Holocaust, a sensational account of the most horrifying religious massacre of the 20th century by Avril Manhattan, Knight of Malta. And Avril Manhattan is the world's foremost authority on Roman Catholicism and politics. A resident of London during World War II, he operated a radio station called Radio Freedom Broadcasting to occupied Europe. He was the author of over 20 books, including the bestseller, The Vatican in World Politics, twice Book of the Month, and going through 57 editions. He was a Great Briton who risked his life daily to expose some of the darkest secrets of the papacy. His books were #1 on the Forbidden Index for the last 50 years. Editors note this issue from 1986. In 2006, the record is now 70 years on the book Forbidden Book list. Okay, so I guess it's 80 years now. Anyways, a preface to the American edition, the Vatican's Holocaust is not a misnomer, it's not an accusation, and even less a speculation. It is an historical fact. Rabid nationalism and religious dogmatism were its two main ingredients. During the existence of Croatia as an independent Catholic state, over 700,000 men, women, and children perished. Many were executed, tortured, died of starvation, buried alive, or were burned to death. Hundreds were forced to become Catholic. The Catholic padres ran concentration camps. Catholic priests were officers in the military corps, which committed such atrocities. 700,000 in the total population of a few million proportionally would be as if 1/3 of the USA population had been exterminated by a Catholic militia. What has been gathered in this book will vindicate the veracity of these facts. Dates, names, places, as well as photos are there to prove them. They should have become known to the American public, not to foster vindictiveness, but to warn them of the danger which racialism and sectarianism, when allied with religious intolerance, can bring to any contemporary nation, whether in Europe or in the New World. This work will be assessed without prejudice and as a lesson, but even more vital, as a warning for the future of Americans, beginning with that of the USA. And that was Avril Manhattan in 1986. An editor's note, an armed Serbia could have easily prevented this Holocaust. Thank God for the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms. Freedom of religion and armed citizenry go hand in hand. It is the only guarantee that this won't happen in the U.S. Editor's note, it is the Vatican, one world government that doesn't want you to have the right to own arms or use any means to defend yourself. So, again, Avril Manhattan, a former Knight of Malta, which was a prolific author, and he's even saying it's the one world government. So the point being is that we need to, this is all coming from the Roman cult, and that's one thing I want to say here. This does not say anything negative about people who happen to be Catholic. This is coming from the Roman cult, not from people who happen to be Catholic. There's people that are Catholic, are some of my best friends, and they're the ones that are feeding me this information. And so this is all coming from the Roman cult. Roman cult equals slavery. They're the ones that are putting you into slavery. This is as old. Goes back to the Roman Empire and before. The Roman cult equals warfare. That's how they make their money, is warfare. This is all coming from the Roman cult. The Roman cult is responsible for all slavery. See the international law video. all bar members, judges, and lawyers are agents of the Roman cult. See Bar Members 1, 2, and 3 videos. See the Judicial Horrors videos. This is all coming from the Roman cult, and we need to put a stop to it. And anyways, this is all coming from the Roman cult. Anyways, I appreciate you watching the video. All slavery, all prisons are institutes of slavery, and they're enslaving people. America has the biggest population of people in prisons as any nation on the planet as a percentage of the population. And so we need to put a stop to this and free the prisoners. And anyways, most of those people that are in these prisons are in there for victimless crimes based on these fraudulent, treasonous contracts. We need to get back to common law is what we need to do. And that common law is the only real answer. I'm telling you, common law is the only real answer, and it gets back to God's law, okay? And that's what happens when you walk away from God's laws. This is the kind of stuff that happens. You get these Satanists running things. Anyways, have a real great day and spread the word.